I am Amy Goodman. This is Democracy Now! Bloomberg is reporting special counsel Robert Mueller has expanded his probe of President Trump beyond possible collusion with Russia. Mueller is reportedly looking at Trump's business activities as well as those of his associates, including his son-in-law, Jared Kushner. According to Bloomberg, investigators are interested in Kushner's attempts to secure financing for some of his family's real estate properties. Our guest, Ryan Grim of The Intercept, recently co-wrote a piece there headlined "Jared Kushner Tried and Failed to Get a $500 million Bailout from Qatar." The article reveals Kushner and his father Charles negotiated directly with billionaire and former Qatar Prime Minister Sheikh Hamad bin Jassim al-Thani to refinance their property at 666 Fifth Avenue here in New York. Throughout 2015 and 2016, Kushner sought a $500 million loan from the Qatari investor to save the property. After promising talks, the deal fell through. The story was published as Qatar remains embroiled in a major diplomatic dispute with its Gulf neighbors, including Saudi Arabia. President Trump sided with Saudi Arabia. According to The Intercept, Kushner played a key behind-the-scenes role in hardening the U.S. posture toward Qatar. Ryan Grim, you have written extensively about this. Talk about what you uncovered.
Right. So a little background. President Trump went to Saudi Arabia this spring. Shortly after that, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, and some other Gulf countries blockaded and isolated Qatar. And immediately Donald Trump took credit for that. He said, I pushed them. I suggested that they take a hard line against the country. He hasn't been totally consistent about where he stands on that, but that was his initial play. Rex Tillerson, the Secretary of State, was trying to broker an end to this blockade, and Jared Kushner, Tillerson believes, played a back-channel role to go directly to President Trump to say, no, we need to take a hard line against the country. So what we uncovered is that he may have reasons for having some animosity there. For the last year, as you said, he was trying to secure a $500 million investment into this property on Fifth Avenue that is deeply underwater. The Kushner companies, it was a kind of a high-flying investment. It made a huge splash when they jumped into it in 2007. Couldn't have been timed worse. They dramatically overpaid. The Kushner company's investment of $500 million seems to be entirely wiped out, according to a New York Times kind of look at the current value of the property. So the Qataris said, okay, we'll give you a $500 million if you can find the rest of the financing elsewhere. He went to China. That blew up when it became public, and around that time, the Qataris said, well, it doesn't look like you're going to get the rest of the investment, so we're not able to go forward at this time. And then just weeks later, you have this blockade, and so you have to ask the uncomfortable question of, well, what if they had made the investment? Would the Trump administration still be taking such a hard line against Qatar, or will other investors see it as retaliation for not coming forward with what otherwise would have been what most people in the industry see as a really bad investment?
So, of course, this meeting in Saudi Arabia led to a number of different developments. So one of the largest weapons deals in the history of the United States with Saudi Arabia. Jared Kushner was there, also apparently close to the son of the king, who ultimately is in charge of the absolutely devastating war that Saudi Arabia is waging with U.S. support in Yemen. All of this coming together as President Trump and Jared Kushner and others, Rex Tillerson as well, went to Saudi Arabia. And when they came out, President Trump himself claiming credit for the isolating of Qatar by the Gulf countries, seemingly going against his own Secretary of State, Rex Tillerson, who was bringing together the forces, he said, went back to Saudi Arabia and Qatar, supposedly to bring these countries together.
Right, and the go-between for all of this is the UAE ambassador to the United States, who is very close to Kushner. His name's Yusuf al-Otaiba. This is this is somebody who's been pushing a very hard line against Qatar in Washington, D.C. for years now. What the U.S. intelligence community has since leaked to the Washington Post is that the thing that the Gulf countries used to launch this blockade, which were some comments posted online and attributed to the Emir of Qatar, were in fact put there by a UAE hacking operation. Immediately after these comments from the Emir appeared, where he was kind of praising Iran and being a little bit rough with the United States, the Qatari news service said, we were hacked. These are not real comments. We withdraw them. We don't know what happened. We're investigating how this happened. The Emir never said these words. Now, according to U.S. intelligence sources, it was actually the UAE that organized the hack of Qatar to post these inflammatory comments, which the UAE and Saudi Arabia then took umbrage at, launching this blockade that was supported by President Trump. And like I said, Otaiba and Kushner are well known to be close allies, and Tillerson believes that Otaiba actually wrote the statement that Trump read, delivered it to Kushner, and Kushner delivered it to Donald Trump.
Before we go, and in the next segment, we're going to be talking about Jared Kushner's wife, President Trump's daughter, Ivanka Trump, and her own businesses, not in this country, but in Indonesia, where Ivanka brand clothes are manufactured. I wanted to ask you, Ryan Grim, about what's happening with the health care debate on Capitol Hill. You cover all developments in Congress closely. This week, of course, the massive news, Republican Majority Leader Mitch McConnell said the Senate will vote next week on whether to repeal the Affordable Care Act without a replacement, even though the bill currently lacks enough Republican support to pass. McConnell's announcement came after President Trump invited all 52 Republican senators to the White House for lunch aimed at reviving stalled efforts on health care. This is what he said.
There is a large majority in our conference that want to demonstrate to the American people that they intend to keep the commitment they made in 4 straight elections to repeal Obamacare. I think we all agree it's better to both repeal and replace, but we could have a vote on either.
Can you talk about the latest developments? It seemed like it was over at this point. And then after the lunch, when President Trump said, we're going to revive this, you're going to sign it, I'm waiting, I'm going to sign it, I'm waiting here with pen in hand. What's happening right now? Do you believe this bill is dead?
Yes, it is over. This is theater at this point. And if you look closely at what McConnell said, he said a large majority of people in our conference, they only have, with John McCain in Arizona and not able to vote, they have 51 people in their conference. So that's one more than they need to have the actual majority, because Mike Pence can break the votes. So, but what he said is they have a majority within their conference. So, in other words, they don't have a majority within the Senate, which is what you need. So what he's saying they're going to do is they're going to open debate on health care reform, and then they're going to present 2 options. For the people that want some kind of a replacement bill, they can vote for that. For people that want to just simply repeal it straight up, they can vote for that instead. So that allows them to get to an actual vote, which McConnell believes is cathartic and is a necessary step to put this to rest. As the House learned that when they pulled their bill and never had a vote, it felt anticlimactic. And the kind of grassroots activists were demanding some action. And so they put together a bill in the House that was never really intended to become law. It was just paper that enough Republicans could sign on to and then punt over to the Senate, where they knew it would fail. And so this is an effort to just put people on record and say, here, you had a chance to vote. Look, we had 40-some for this, we had 40-some for that. We don't have enough for either. Now we're moving on. But because Trump continues to insist on all of this theater, he has burned through weeks and weeks where he could have been doing tax reform or infrastructure or any other part of his agenda. You know, we're getting close to August, and he's still on this when we've known for months that it didn't have the vote.
Ryan Grim, I want to thank you for being with us, Bureau Chief for The Intercept. We'll link to your latest piece, U.S. lawmakers seek to criminally outlaw support for boycott campaign against Israel, and your other pieces. This is Democracy Now! When we come back, it's Made in America Week.